Hi there, you're with BQ Prime, and this is the Fineprint. On our special series on ONDC, or Open Network for Digital Commerce, last time around you heard Trilegal's Rahul Matthan deconstruct the workings of the platform. But as many of you would know, there's a beta testing that's going on in over 100 cities, and that has thrown up its own set of challenges. Today, Rahul will talk about some of those and also problems that we need to talk about and think about today to make ONDC into a thriving marketplace of marketplaces. Thank you, Rahul, for joining us here on the Fine Print yet again. What is it that you've heard from various stakeholders who have participated in this beta testing?
To be honest, mixed, but that's how it should be. I'd be surprised if it was just a slam dunk success. This is a complicated product, and I think because it's unbundling, it also requires you to unlearn a lot of things that you believe are the way in which these things need to be run. And so I think a lot of the challenges that we face during the beta stage is roughly around that.
Right.
People unlearning the mentality that they have, and it's a simple. We all know that there is this. Once you vertically integrate things, there are economies of scale, and there are advantages you can get out of that. To rethink the way you do it when that's been the truth is actually hard.
Yeah.
But having said that, look, I think that the beta testing, even though it sort of started officially much later, the beacon protocol has been tested very well during the pandemic, and has actually resulted in some very remarkable successes.
Do you want to spend a minute on the protocol on which ONDC is sort of based on, or built on rather?
Yeah, so the beacon protocol is the underlying protocol on which ONDC is built, and quite frankly, the beacon protocol, there are bits of the beacon protocol in the NDHM as well, the National Digital Health Mission.
Yeah.
So that is the core protocol on which a lot of these platforms are built, and that core protocol actually allows mobility-based commerce. So if it is purely digital, then beacon doesn't work. So things like Kindle downloads or music downloads, that's not what beacon is for. But if there's any component of buying something or buying a service that needs to be performed in a locationally in a locational sense,
right,
that's when beacon really comes to fore.
So should we think of it as building blocks on which these technologies are sort of based on? Can you?
Yeah, so the way you would unbundle
Yeah.
is by using the beacon protocol.
Okay.
And so in the
It's
last
the hammer
episode,
that you're breaking down everything with.
breaking and building as well. So once you break it down, so I always like to think of this as Lego blocks.
Okay.
Because if you've played with Lego, you know that you can build fabulous things, but at the base is a small little piece.
Yeah.
And that piece can interlock, and that's the beauty of Lego. And that's the beauty of these digital public infrastructure, which are made of digital public goods. And so the beacon protocol is really that little Lego piece that interlocks with the other piece, and it shows you how to do that. So I think the advantage of beacon and the benefits of beacon we saw during the pandemic, where a lot of micro entrepreneurs were able to leverage beacon in the cities where beacon was being rolled out to do things like restaurant deliveries. It's completely open source. It's on a platform. Everyone can download it and use it. It's just a question of the implementation.
Got it.
And it'll forever, I think, be delivered in this manner, where the underlying protocol will be open. And I think that's really the way in which a lot of these platforms need to be built, where the core underlying piece needs to be open.
Which is what people keep saying, open source, right?
The problem with open source is that open source has a very, very specific meaning. And that pertains to the actual code and the software. This is a protocol. So this is basically, it tells you that if you want this information, you have to ask a question with these parameters. And then if you are to provide information, you have to send it in this format. Now, once you know how to exchange information, then you can be sure that the information that's coming in, regardless of whether it's a taxi driver or if it's a Kirana store, essentially has the same standard components. It will have one price element, it will have one unit element, it'll have some description, it'll have some photograph, I don't know, whatever the protocol says. And then that can be used in any way possible. So once again, just think about the Lego. You have the certainty that if you put a blue piece against a red piece, they will stick together, no matter what you do. And you may have some piece which has got a tire on it. You know that if you stick that tire into the piece, it will become a car, or it'll become a motorcycle, and something with a wheel. So that's what a protocol will do.
Okay, all right. Didn't mean this to be a crash course for me on the tech bit of it, but would want to understand before we come to the challenges, what's really happening in beta testing? Is it that existing players have had to, let's say, build something afresh to integrate with ONDC? Can you give us some insights into what this beta testing entails?
Yeah, so as I said, there is the seller side and the buyer side, right?
Yeah.
So now look at the seller side. In the seller side, there are many companies that are going about aggregating sellers.
Yeah.
You've got GoFrugal, you've got people like that, which
Yeah.
are essentially going to supermarkets, local supermarkets, not the sort of the big supermarkets, but just sort of smallish supermarkets, and aggregating them, figuring out what their catalog is, you're putting their catalog into an ONDC format, and then once these have been aggregated, and they potentially could work in a particular city or a particular area. Once they've aggregated enough of these, then they can actually offer those to the buyer apps. Now, the buyer apps at this stage are largely big players. Paytm, for instance, is on the buyer app side of things, and Paytm has got a large customer base. Already they're offering a bunch of things, including Paytm Mall. So they have a similar offering.
Correct.
And I think the challenge to beta testing was really to try and leverage the most of what the ONDC platform has to offer, because it's possible to make ONDC work just like an Amazon or a Paytm, but or a Flipkart.
Yeah.
But what's the point in that? You want to actually enable. The last time I gave you the example of getting a coffee on your ride to the airport. How would you enable something like that? And that would take a complete re-engineering of the way in which you've designed your system. So look, this is beta testing. This is really
so
to
this
see.
Beta testing is, I mean, are there a control group of people who are ordering and delivering and transacting, or this has been thrown open to public?
There's a bunch of people who would be whitelisted. And so for them, let's say Paytm, on their Paytm app, they will see certain additional services that are available, ONDC services that are available to them that you and I would not see. And I think, look, beta testing is not really to test the extreme use cases. It's to see if all the plumbing works. And I think that is what was done up until now at a small scale. And now it's being ramped up for a larger scale. So that's sort of the way
let's talk
designed.
about the leakages that have been identified in the plumbing works. What's the feedback that you are getting from participants that you've spoken with? Where are the biggest challenges?
No, I don't think I don't think it's useful pointing out all the various things that fail in the beta testing.
No, not fail, but I'll tell you where sort of I'm coming from with this question. There is, even, I don't know if those are the challenges that even a beta testing will be able to solve, or even answer or have an answer to at this stage, which is the challenge of trust, which is the challenge of credibility, with this challenge of, hey, look, this is what I saw and this is what I get. Because at the end of the day, you are sort of the end customer wants something that he or she wants in the same form that you've shown it to them, and at the best price, right? That's all that the customer cares about, and whatever goes behind in these protocols, etc., is really not the concern of the end user. So have we achieved that level of satisfaction in any of these tests?
I really think people are looking for those, are testing for those things. You're right. I think trust and price, but price is just one of the parameters. There could be, I don't mind paying more, but I want comfort, or I don't mind paying more, but I want to make sure that it'll come on time. These are all the various things that could come into it. But I think trust is really important, and we need to figure out whether we can trust this system, because we may try it out once, but to become a loyal user, you need to make sure it works all the time. I don't think this is something that we will, even if we get good scores right now, that it really makes it gives you a conclusive answer, because trust is only relevant at scale. And so I don't want to say that we're very happy with the results of the beta testing, because we could be very sad once you run it at scale. So these are the sorts of things that I think you should only test at some time, at a later point in time in the market. And you know that this is true of all big platforms. In the beginning, it's great, but over time, all the sort of complaints start piling up to the point where people start saying it's a problem. But I think you raise an important point, which is, trust is an important factor. And when you disaggregate the whole ecosystem, where's the neck to wring? And that is an extraordinarily challenging component of this whole ONDC unbundling that has to be addressed. And I think the way it will be addressed, of course, is through actually creating a module which will be dedicated to governance. The governance side of it is two-pronged. One is,
I'll come to how the regulation and maybe let's not the regulation, but the governance structure of that might work. But I just have one final question on this beta testing. Does it mean that I test it only with the existing large players, or have you seen even the smaller guys who we want this universe to open for
of course,
also sort of get traction? Or let's say, because there was also a big this thing of, hey, who gets on ONDC first? Is the buyer get on it first? Do you need to have enough pool of buyers for the sellers to find it attractive? A chicken and an egg situation, right? So how have those sort of ideas manifested in this testing phase?
So I think so once again, because it's a chicken and egg, it's only going to work when there's enough of both, right? If you've got a lot of drivers who are on the platform and not enough riders, the drivers are going to migrate away from the platform, because you're like, look, I might as well, it's a great idea, but I might as well go somewhere else, but I can actually get rides during the day. And so that's a chicken and egg. And I think that's something that time will really tell. But in terms of whether they're being tested enough, each interaction is being tested for the things it needs to be tested for, which is
the handovers individually.
Are the handovers happening properly? Are they capable of being understood by the people at all ends? What are the problems? You come up with a protocol and you say this grand idea of saying I'll build a catalog, but there's a lot that goes into building a catalog, a lot that the big e-commerce players have mastered. They know exactly
the specifications, the dimensions,
and
quality,
how to make it most efficiently, right? I mean, you've got I don't know, 25 different varieties of apples if you want to buy it. Now, how do you, in the most efficient way, present that? And so I mean, I think those are the challenges that really the system needs to work out as it's building out these catalogs.
Do you see the large players excited too? Because look, your kirana store will not know how to catalog. Are the sort of players that you speak with excited, to do this, which only, let's say, the large players have been doing, because it's one of the USPs, right?
Well, look, I mean, I think what's really exciting is there's a lot of promise in the network. The promise allows people who see specialized use cases have enough interest to say, look, I can see the promise, and I know this is a specialized use case. It perhaps is not properly addressed in the large vertically integrated e-commerce players, and so it's worthwhile me spending the time fixing this particular problem, and a lot of people are doing that. So there's a lot of interest. So one, there's a lot of interest in people who have seen India's digital public infrastructure story and say, we're no more, never again betting against these things. I thought I'd wait last time and I was left in the dust. I'm not going to do it again. So there's that category of people who can no longer risk not getting involved in wave one. And then there are those who, on the back either of this or on the back of the previous success, will say, this is a hard problem to solve, and I ordinarily would not have solved it. But look, there seems to be this other side which is working out. See, if you unbundle it into 4 components, then I only have to concentrate on one of the components. So that's an easier lift. Then if I was saying, look, I'm going to get fresh produce from the farmers in Gulbarga, I not only have to aggregate the farmers, I've got to then figure out the logistics, and I've got to everything is on my head. And the other three parts of it may defeat the problem. Whereas if you can only focus on the one and rely on other people who say, look, I know there's a good market from Gulbarga to Bangalore, let me do the logistics of it. That's why this is an interesting model. It's the tough problems that people aren't solving that we are now breaking up and allowing different people to solve it. And no one will build logistics infrastructure from Gulbarga to Bangalore only for Bajra.
Correct.
They will build it for that plus cotton plus everything else, maybe even transport from place to place. And that's when you're going to find the magic coming out of it.
Okay. So in this magical world, who is governing it? You alluded to, you wanted to talk about the governance aspect of it. Does ONDC sign individual contracts with every seller or buyer app that's coming? How is that contractual equation sort of working out or going to work?
Yeah, look, I mean, this is all still fluid. The actual framework is not crystallized. But if you look at the way in which the other digital public infrastructure in the country has been built, essentially running multiple bilateral contracts is impossible in this kind of a setup. If you're an Amazon or a Flipkart, then you are one central pole around which everyone can sign contracts, and it works. But if you
also have a much higher bargaining power,
I mean, almost none, right? I mean, so basically it's a take it or leave it. This is what you have to do to be a seller. This is what you have to do to be a buyer. I mean, users, we don't even look at the contracts if we forget about negotiation, right? But if you're doing a multi-party transaction where essentially everyone's agreeing to provide a particular service, and that lots of people down the chain and up the chain are relying on each person to perform the service, it's actually impossible, I would say, to run this with bilateral contracts. I mean, you could do it with bilateral contracts, but then for each use case, you're going to have to come up with a new contract with the same person. And so the only way to do it is to do some sort of an ecosystem participation terms. So understand that this is the ecosystem, understand that these are the roles in the ecosystem, and people sign up to the ecosystem agreeing to perform the particular roles that they're supposed to perform. And that, I think, is the model that needs to be applied when you talk about contractually. The one part of this, of course, is what happens if this goes wrong. And I don't know if you want to get into governance now or
no, please go ahead. Yes.
So governance, how do we figure out which neck to ring?
Like you said, there are individual entities performing different parts. One guy fails or doesn't live up to its end of its bargain. I mean, what happens then?
And look, this is a solved problem. If you think about cross-border commerce, there are many moving parts in from where it's picked up at the factory, it's put onto a truck that takes it to the ship that takes it across the sea that brings it. This is a solved problem
world, in the physical world,
all over the world, and not just now, for like centuries. That's what bills of lading are for, and that's how all these documents are transmitted.
But like I can physically see that entity now. I don't know in that like ordering process where the handover is happening, who's sort of not sort of performed to
so the way you're absolutely
promise.
Right. But because it's digital, you can actually manifest all of these things very easily. So the way you do that is to create dashboards.
Okay.
So what's a dashboard? Essentially, everything that I described is a workflow. And since I said these are Lego blocks, you can put any Lego block in any order, and you can create a new workflow. But each workflow has a handoff point, and that handoff point can be recorded in the system. And what will a dashboard look like? If there's a 3-part flow to the workflow, you can see where the transaction went through and where it stopped. And then you can say that everyone before it stopped is not liable.
Okay.
Everyone after it stopped is also not liable, because all you know is that the transaction didn't happen. You didn't know that it didn't happen because the warehouse was shut on that day. And so the delivery boy came and was not able to pick it up. But if you've got a dashboard, we'll be able to see it.
Okay. And who's in this system holding the warehouse accountable, or the owner of the warehouse accountable?
So then that's the second part. which is the dispute resolution process. And you've heard a lot about online dispute resolution. And I think as far as ONDC is concerned as well, ODR will be the mechanism that will be adopted. Now you combine the two. And if you've got dashboard-based evidence with an online dispute resolution process that's quick, in my ideal world, I've written about this before, asynchronous, which means I can file a complaint, the other party can file a complaint. We don't have to find a date that we're all at the court in the same time before the judge. That's the biggest reason why we've got pendency, right? Because you have three parties. Any one of them could either be sick or unable to attend, and you've got to give a passover. You don't have that problem with ODR. And you can have the judge also, or whoever is resolving the dispute, issue the verdict asynchronously. Don't ever have to meet. Don't ever have to talk. All the evidence is available here. And once there is confidence in the system, see, I don't mind losing a case if it's my fault. But I want to be very sure that it's my fault, and I want to be able to say clearly that it's that person did something. It's not completely my fault. A dashboard-based system where there is clear handoff at each stage it makes it easy to ascertain who is responsible, particularly if it's linear. Now, sometimes these are not linear, and that's where it becomes more complicated building these models. But if you've built the workflow digitally, you should be able to figure out where exactly it went wrong, also digitally, and find the solution in that manner.
Sure. So you've used some beautiful words like evidence, dispute resolution, and the word that I want to now talk about is the liability that you mentioned. Is the system punishing you at the end of it because, let's say, that warehouse is shut for 15 orders in a month? Now, will this, let's say, digital ecosystem punish you by people just not sending you more orders, or there is actual liability for those 15 errors?
So it's probably both. Okay. And I think, once again, when we build this, we've got to build it layer by layer. So you've got to first get
people on the platform.
Get people on the platform, get goods moving, get payments working.
But I'm saying these are important concepts to think about to be able to answer to the people who are coming from the word go, right?
No,
and
I'm
absolutely.
Pretty sure
that.
And I would say that the way to do it really is to first explain that this is working. People are seeing it, and then there may be one or two errors. People are still very optimistic about the platform, so they're like, look, okay, I really like this platform, so I don't mind repaying the person or whatever because I like it, but this can't go on. So let's now start working on fixing this. And at that point in time, you mentioned, I don't know if it was in this conversation or the earlier one, trust. We need a module for trust. Right. So we need some kind of a module for trust. But when we've got an unbundled ecosystem like this, we can actually have fungible trust, which means if you are a rider in a mobility service and you have low trust scores, can we translate that trust into your performance as a seller on the platform? And can we see whether there is some smart way in which we can correlate these two? I mean, I had this idea when this is sort of trust graph portability. This is the holy grail for the sharing economy. So someone who is a low-rated driver or a low-rated rider in an Uber app is likely to be a low-rated customer in an Airbnb app. But because they don't talk to each other, we never know. And what are the harms that are happening?
Very Black Mirror memories are coming back, and how the rating universe, can cause havoc as well. Yeah, I'm sure it's happening. It's not Black Mirror. It's not real life anymore. It's now real. Final question for you on this conversation, Rahul. We see a lot of logistics, retail, food so far on it. What are the other questions you are getting asked from businesses? Because we saw Microsoft announce that it's going to be both a seller and a buyer. So for large players, where are they seeing the promise in this platform?
I don't think, of course, everyone's got their own idea as to why they want to be on it. But I don't think anyone who comes in with a clear idea saying this is what I'm going to do is going to be successful.
I just want to sign up, be part of it, and see where it's going.
And see where it's going. And then see where, not only where it's going, see where I have an aptitude to actually do something with it. Leverage what I have. I may be really good at data. that's what I guess a Microsoft would do, because Microsoft's got no experience with commerce in that sense. But a Microsoft would say, look, I mean, I know how to build smart algorithms, and I can come up with really smart workflows. Everyone's going to do all the aggregation and all the other sides, but let me just string them together in new and unique ways. And I've built the best office suites. The whole world is using it. I want to try my hand at stitching some of these things together. It could be what they're thinking.
But it'd still be B2B, right?
No, they would be it could be anything. I mean, they could actually even build on the back of that a buyer app to say that, look, I've got a really unique proposition. If you want all the funky things, come to my buyer app, because I have strung 20 different workflows. Buy a coffee as you're on the way to the airport, or you go to a doctor's giving you the prescription. Automatically, by the time you get home, your prescription's already at home, and find a way to stitch it together. I don't know. I mean, people are really inventive. They look at problems, and if you've got all these Lego blocks, you can stick it together and build whatever you want. It takes some engineering. You and I can't do it. I mean, at least I can't do it. I don't know. You can do it.
Not at all.
but that is really why I find this interesting.
Absolutely. It's not just the commercials of it, but as the user, we are also excited about the promise of ONDC and probably the problems that we don't even know exist in our lives that some of this innovation will solve. Thank you, Rahul, for joining us here on the Fine Print yet again. And thank you so much for watching.